You are living through the collapse of the most powerful empire in human history, and most people are too distracted to notice. While you scroll, America bleeds. We have over $35 trillion in debt, 650,000 homeless, and 1 in 5 kids who can't afford food in the richest country on earth. Life expectancy is falling. Cities are rotting, and trust in government is lower than it was during Watergate. And here's the real kicker. For the first time ever, most young Americans believe the future will be worse than the past. That's not decline. That's collapse with Wi-Fi. Rome fell in slow motion, and so will we. So today, we're counting down the 10 brutal signs that prove the American empire is next. And if you think this video is just clickbait, wait until you hear number 1. Let's begin. Number 10. Crumbling infrastructure. The empire built on rust. Let's stop pretending America looks like a superpower, because once you leave the wealthy enclaves and tech campuses, you start to realize this empire is literally falling apart. Roads cracked like desert clay, bridges corroded like ancient relics, water pipes older than World War II. And here's the kicker: infrastructure failure is one of the last signs of collapse in every fallen civilization. From Rome's aqueducts to Britain's colonial railroads, when the bones of a nation rot, it's game over. And America? It's not just rotting, it's collapsing in slow motion. The American Society of Civil Engineers gave the USAC on its 2025 infrastructure report card. That's not just embarrassing, it's a death sentence. Over 43,000 bridges in the U.S. are rated structurally deficient, meaning they're one earthquake or flood away from catastrophe. We've got 2.2 million miles of aging underground pipes, many of which still contain lead, slowly poisoning our citizens, especially in low-income, minority neighborhoods. Just ask the people of Jackson, Mississippi, or Flint, Michigan, how that turns out. And rail? We have more derailments per year than any industrialized country, and our rail system still runs on technology from the 1970s. Meanwhile, China just built 24,000 miles of high-speed rail in a decade, and we can't even finish a subway extension without blowing billions and running 15 years late. This isn't about potholes, it's about systemic decay. Every time a bridge collapses or a dam cracks, it's another metaphor ripped into reality. In 2023, the Francis Scott Key Bridge collapse in Baltimore didn't just kill 6 workers, it symbolized what happens when empires neglect their foundations for too long. But you know what we do fund? Overseas wars, corporate bailouts, and endless subsidies for industries that give us nothing in return. Meanwhile, our power grid is one cyber attack away from medieval darkness. Texas froze in 2021. California burns every summer, and the Northeast floods like it's the 1600s. If Rome crumbled when its roads became unusable and its cities went dark, what happens when the world's richest empire can't keep the lights on in Louisiana or fix a bridge in Pennsylvania? You don't need an invasion to end an empire. Just ignore the rot long enough. We did. And now the collapse is coming from beneath our feet. Number 9. A legal system that no longer delivers justice, only power. You want to see the clearest sign that America's collapse is more than economic? Look no further than its legal system. The foundation of any stable empire isn't just roads or armies. It's legitimacy, a shared belief that the rules apply equally, that justice, even if slow, still prevails. That belief is dead. Because today, the American legal system has mutated into something grotesque, a 2-tiered enforcement racket, where billionaires buy immunity and working people get handcuffed for survival. As of 2025, 1 in every 3 American adults has a criminal record. But how many Wall Street CEOs went to jail for the 2008 collapse? 0. How many politicians have faced real consequences for insider trading, campaign finance violations, or lying under oath? Almost none. But miss a car payment or get caught with a joint in a red state, and suddenly you're enemy number one. Let me hit you with a stat that should terrify any so-called democracy. Over 90% of criminal cases never go to trial. They're resolved through plea deals, most of which are coerced. Not justice, just pressure, poverty, and broken public defense systems. And if you're poor, black, or mentally ill, good luck. You'll wait months in jail pre-trial because you can't post bail. Meanwhile, wealthy defendants live in penthouses, waiting for white-collar judges to dismiss their charges on technicalities. This isn't just corruption, it's feudalism with a gavel. Judges are elected in 39 states, meaning justice is up for sale. Private prisons still profit off keeping cells full. And megacorporations now use lawsuits to silence critics, bankrupt whistleblowers, and rig outcomes through endless appeals. It gets worse. Police departments in over 600 cities rely on civil asset forfeiture, legalized theft, where cops can seize your property without convicting you of a crime. In 2024 alone, Americans lost over $3.2 billion in assets this way. No charges, no trial, just gone. Empires fall when the law no longer serves the people, only the powerful. Rome did it when emperors declared themselves gods and made dissent a crime. America is doing it now, with surveillance courts, weaponized bureaucracy, and a legal system more interested in punishment than fairness. When justice becomes arbitrary, people stop believing, and when belief dies, collapse is right behind it. Number 8, cities that no longer function. Urban collapse in real time. People think empires collapse in the countryside, in some distant battlefield or borderland skirmish. But the truth? They collapse in their cities. And if you want to see America's future, take a long, hard look at its urban centers right now. Because from San Francisco to Philadelphia, from Chicago to New Orleans, the once proud engines of American innovation are now cracking under the weight of unsolved crises. Homelessness has exploded. As of 2024, over 653,000 Americans are homeless, the highest number ever recorded. That's a 12% increase in 1 year. Entire tent cities stretch across downtown sidewalks, underpasses, and city parks. These aren't just people down on their luck. Many are working full-time jobs and still can't afford a place to live. Meanwhile, luxury condos sit empty, bought as investment shells by foreign capital or hedge funds. That's not a housing market, that's a dystopian asset bubble. Crime? It's complicated. While violent crime may be dropping in some cities, quality of life crimes are surging. Retail theft, drug use, vandalism, open-air dealing. It's become so normalized that major chains like Walgreens, Target, and Whole Foods have abandoned downtown locations, citing safety concerns and unsustainable losses. And don't even get me started on public transit. America's subways, buses, and commuter lines are stuck in a death spiral of underfunding, broken infrastructure, and declining ridership. In 2025, New York's MTA needs $2.5 billion just to stay afloat, and LA Metro is hemorrhaging users. Who wants to ride trains that smell like fentanyl, break down twice a week, and are patrolled by overwhelmed security staff? Cities are supposed to be the crown jewels of a civilization, the places where culture, technology, and community flourish. But ours have become modern-day Byzantiums, surrounded by decay, protected by privatized security, and governed by politicians more interested in social media clout than solving anything. Meanwhile, middle-class families flee to the suburbs, or abandon blue states entirely, leaving a vacuum filled with instability, corporate landlords, and opportunistic decay. Rome fell when its cities could no longer feed, police, or house their citizens. America is teetering on that same edge. When your cities stop working, your empire doesn't need to fall. It already has. You're just watching the aftershocks. Number 7. The rise of the surveillance state, freedom traded for convenience. There was a time when Americans believed privacy was a right, not a luxury. When the government needed a warrant, corporations needed permission, and the concept of freedom included being left alone. That time is dead. In 2025, the United States has quietly become one of the most surveilled nations on Earth, not for safety, but for control. You are being watched every second of every day. Your phone tracks your location, even when it's off. Your smart TV records your conversations. Your refrigerator has a Wi-Fi chip. And it's not paranoia if it's baked into the system. The NSA still hoards billions of communications, as revealed by Snowden over a decade ago. And nothing has changed. In fact, it's only expanded. The 2024 rollout of AI-enhanced surveillance tools has supercharged monitoring capabilities to a level even Orwell couldn't imagine. License plate readers scan every car you pass. Facial recognition software maps your expressions in real time at airports, concerts, grocery stores. And predictive policing algorithms now forecast crime before it happens, an eerie echo of Minority Report that disproportionately targets poor, Black, and Latino communities. You think you're free? Try speaking out against war on YouTube. Try organizing a protest on Facebook. See how fast the shadow bans come. See how quickly your bank decides your transactions violate terms. See how the IRS suddenly audits your Venmo transfers. This isn't just Big Brother, it's big tech plus big government, fused into a cybernetic organism that exists to monetize your behavior and punish your dissent. During COVID, we normalized health surveillance. Now, biometric ID, vaccine passports, and digital wallets are being trialed as permanent systems of identification and control. And all of it, every single bite, is justified in the name of safety. But remember this: empires never impose control suddenly. They erode liberty, one crisis at a time. Rome used religion. The British used law. America uses algorithms. And the worst part? We handed them the keys. We clicked, "I agree," for a 10% off coupon. We gave away our faces for Instagram filters. We installed our own surveillance devices in our pockets and called it innovation. When freedom becomes inconvenient, tyranny wears a smile. This isn't democracy anymore. It's a data plantation, and you're the crop. Number 6. The collapse of American manufacturing, an empire that builds nothing. You can't stay an empire if you don't make anything. That's the brutal truth no one in Washington wants to admit. For the last 40 years, America has systematically dismantled its manufacturing base, the same foundation that once made it the most powerful, self-sufficient nation on Earth. And now, in 2025, we're staring down the barrel of that decision. A nation that used to build battleships in 48 hours can't make enough baby formula to feed its own children. That's not progress. That's collapse. In 1970, manufacturing made up 24% of the US GDP. Today, it's barely 10%, and most of that is automated or offshored. Since 2001 alone, we've lost over 5 million factory jobs, many of them shipped straight to China, under the false promise of globalization. Politicians from both parties sold it as a win. Cheaper goods, more services, a post-industrial utopia. What we got instead was deindustrialized heartlands, ghost towns, suicide spikes, and an economy hooked on imports from strategic adversaries. In 2024, the U.S. imported over $560 billion worth of goods from China, everything from medical supplies to microchips to fertilizer. You know what that means? We can't fight a real war, respond to a pandemic, or build infrastructure without asking Beijing for permission. How's that for national security? And even when we do try to rebuild, the supply chain is so fractured, the skills base so eroded that it takes 10 years to open a single semiconductor plant in Arizona. Meanwhile, China builds entire cities in 18 months. The working class, once the backbone of America, is now gigged out, burned out, and blamed for falling behind in a game that was rigged against them from the start. They were told to learn to code. But the truth is, you can't run an empire on PowerPoint presentations and TikTok dances. You need steel, cement, circuits, ships. Empires don't just collapse because of war. They collapse when they can't fix their own bridges, defend their own borders, or clothe their own people without foreign aid. Rome stopped minting real coins. We stopped making real products. Same outcome. When you outsource your factories, you outsource your future. And America? We've already signed the shipping manifest. Number 5. The rise of neo-feudal landlords. The empire owned by corporations. Here's something most Americans don't realize. You don't live in a democracy, you live in a rentocracy. And if you don't believe me, ask your landlord. Actually, better yet, check the deed. Because there's a decent chance it belongs to BlackRock, Vanguard, or some private equity firm you've never heard of. In 2025, corporate ownership of residential property has exploded. In some cities, 1 out of every 5 homes is now owned by institutional investors. These aren't families. These aren't mom-and-pop landlords. These are billion-dollar firms buying up single-family homes in bulk, jacking up rent, and cornering the housing market one zip code at a time. That's not capitalism. That's modern feudalism. You work, they own. And no matter how hard you grind, you'll never own a piece of the empire. The average American home now costs 7.7 times the median income, a level not seen since before the 2008 housing crash. But here's the twist. This time, the banks aren't the only villains. This time, the collapse is being engineered deliberately by entities that profit whether you buy, rent, or default. While you're scraping together $2,000 for first and last month's rent, these firms are using borrowed money at 2% interest to outbid families in all cash offers. They're not just buying homes, they're buying your ability to build wealth. Meanwhile, zoning laws, NIMBY policies, and regulatory capture keep new housing supply artificially low, ensuring prices never fall far enough for the average American to get in the game. And guess what? It's not just residential. These same corporations own your office building, your grocery store, your hospital. You don't live in America anymore. You lease space from the empire's new aristocracy. Rome collapsed when land became concentrated in the hands of a few patricians, leaving the masses dependent and voiceless. Sound familiar? The American dream of home ownership has become a trapdoor, and we're all falling through it. When you can't own, you can't build. When you can't build, you can't fight back. And when the empire's land belongs to the highest bidder, you better hope you can afford to rent a seat at the collapse. Number 4. Food systems on the brink. Famine in the land of plenty America grows more food than almost any country in the world. And yet, in 2025, over 44 million Americans struggle with food insecurity, including 1 in 5 children. How is that even possible? Simple. Because food in this empire isn't grown to nourish people, it's grown to maximize profit. The American food system has become a monstrous machine of monoculture, chemical dependency, and corporate consolidation. And now it's breaking. The average fruit or vegetable travels over 1,500 miles before reaching your plate. Our soil is so depleted from over-farming and synthetic fertilizers that we now grow calories without nutrients. You can eat until you're full and still be malnourished. That's not a glitch. That's the business model. Over 70% of U.S. farmland is dedicated to just 3 crops: corn, soy, and wheat. Not because they're healthy, but because they're subsidized, exportable, and easily processed into ultra-profitable junk. Meanwhile, real food like organic vegetables, clean meat, and non-toxic grains is priced like a luxury product. You think a poor family in Detroit can afford $8 blueberries or $12 grass-fed beef? That's not food insecurity. That's food apartheid. Add to that climate chaos, floods in the Midwest, mega droughts in California, and unpredictable frosts in Florida, and we're looking at the most fragile food supply chain in modern American history. In 2023, wheat yields dropped 13% due to extreme weather. Cattle herds shrank to record lows because ranchers couldn't afford feed. And the cost of basic groceries jumped over 20% in just 2 years. You feel it every time you check out. Eggs used to cost $1.29. Now they're pushing $4. Milk's up, meat's rationed. And the dollar store has become the new grocery store for millions. It gets worse. 4 companies control over 80% of all meat processing. 3 companies dominate grain exports. 2 control the seed market. This isn't farming, it's feudal control of the food chain. And when you can't feed your people without corporate permission or international shipping lanes, you're not sovereign, you're screwed. Rome collapsed when bread shortages turned to riots. America's heading down the same path with fake meat startups, lab-grown solutions, and Bill Gates quietly becoming the largest private farmland owner in the country. If you can't grow real food for your own people, the empire is already dead. It just doesn't know it yet. Number 3. Demographic collapse. A dying empire. With no one left to inherit. Empires don't collapse just from invasion. They crumble when there's no one left to sustain them. That's where America stands. With a birth rate of just 1.62, well below the 2.1 replacement level, the U.S. is facing a demographic cliff. Fewer workers, taxpayers, and caregivers are left to support a rapidly aging population. By 2030, 1 in 5 Americans will be over 65. Medicare and Social Security are heading toward insolvency, and the worker-to-retiree ratio has fallen from 5 to 1 in 1960 to barely 2 to 1 today. This is not sustainable. Rome withered when its core population shrank and it relied on outsiders and mercenaries. America's modern equivalent? Mass immigration without assimilation, a shrinking middle class, and a polarized workforce divided between low-wage labor and elite knowledge jobs. Add chronic illness, addiction, and generational resentment, and the result is a nation exhausted biologically, economically, and socially. Meanwhile, young, growing nations like India and parts of Africa are taking over as the world's labor engines. America's leadership, dominated by the elderly, clings to power while failing to prepare the next generation. Rome didn't fall because of its enemies. It fell because it couldn't replace itself. And neither can America. Number 2. Cultural fragmentation. A nation that can't agree on reality empires rot from the inside before they fall from the outside. America has already crossed that threshold. This isn't just a nation divided, it's a nation with no shared sense of truth. In 2025, Americans can't agree on history, facts, or the future. Some blame corporations, others shadow elites, and others democracy itself, and disturbingly, they all have a point. Rome fractured when loyalty shifted from the republic to factions and cults. Today's Americans identify not as citizens, but as tribes political, regional, cultural, and algorithms feed the division because outrage is profitable. MIT studies show falsehoods spread 6 times faster than facts online. Over 60% of Americans distrust every major news source. That's not healthy skepticism, that's a breakdown in shared reality. Without common ground, there's no path to solutions. People retreat into bubbles, and the state becomes more authoritarian while corporations profit from the chaos. Even basic words like freedom or justice mean completely different things depending on who you ask. That's not civil discourse, it's digital Babel. Rome couldn't survive without a shared identity, and neither can America. When you can't speak freely, trust your neighbors, or agree on reality, collapse isn't theoretical, it's inevitable. Number 1, loss of meaning. An empire that no longer knows why it exists. This is the final stage. The one no stimulus package, election, or technological breakthrough can fix. Empires collapse when they lose their reason for being, when citizens stop believing the system serves anything beyond itself. And in 2025, America has reached that terminal point. Ask yourself a simple question: what is America for anymore? Not slogans, not nostalgia, not marketing campaigns. What is the shared mission? There isn't one. We no longer build toward a future, we consume the present until it collapses beneath us. Work has lost meaning. Religion has lost authority. Community has been replaced by platforms. Purpose has been replaced by distraction. In late Rome, citizens withdrew from civic life, obsessed over entertainment, spectacle, and survival, while corruption hollowed out the state. America's version is endless scrolling, dopamine addiction, and a culture where the highest aspiration is passive income or viral fame. According to Gallup, only 31% of Americans feel engaged in their work, the lowest level ever recorded. Suicide rates remain near historic highs. Drug overdoses kill more Americans annually than car accidents and guns combined. And despite record wealth, life satisfaction is falling, especially among young people. This isn't just decline, it's existential exhaustion. A civilization without meaning cannot defend itself, cannot sacrifice, cannot rebuild. Rome tried to replace meaning with bread and circuses. America offers streaming services, food delivery, and endless debt. Different packaging, same outcome. When things finally break, when the dollar cracks, when the grid fails, when institutions lose legitimacy, there will be nothing holding the center together. No shared belief, no common story. Just individuals negotiating collapse alone. And that's the final truth most people don't want to face. America isn't collapsing because of one bad policy or one corrupt leader. It's collapsing because it no longer believes in itself. And no empire in history has ever survived that moment. Rome didn't. Britain didn't. And unless something fundamentally changes, not politically, but spiritually and structurally, America won't either. The collapse isn't coming. It's already here. The only question left is whether anyone will be capable of rebuilding when the dust finally settles. Empires don't fall in a single day. They fall in silence, in debt, in distraction, while everyone pretends everything's fine. America isn't immune. It's next. The only question is, will you survive the collapse or be buried by it? If you're still watching, you already know the truth. Now, what are you going to do about it?